Have you ever known that person that just wants to isolate themselves, and not in the introvert sense, but the person that just wants to be isolated? We're going to talk about that today from Proverbs chapter 18. Hey guys, and welcome back to God's Word Made Simple by Simple Servant Ministries. My name is Aaron Hawk, and if this is your first time visiting with us, I just want to say welcome and thank you for joining us today. God's Word Made Simple is an online discipleship ministry dedicated to taking God's Word and making it simple. We want to help you understand God's Word, apply it to your life, and grow in your relationship with the Lord. And by the way, if you appreciate this ministry and content, at some point make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn that bell notification to all so you don't miss any future videos. We would love to have you as part of our family. Okay guys, so we're going to go from chapter 18 verses 1 through 8 today, and then of course we'll pick up next time with part of the rest of this chapter. So let's start in chapter 18 verse 1, and this is a verse that has really had a lot of impact on me, both personally and in ministry. Because so often if you have someone in authority over you or a political situation, people want to get you isolated so that they can control the situation. So he who separates himself seeks his own desire, and often the people that want to isolate you are also isolated within their own little world. And so I think about this often when I read this verse. He who separates himself seeks his own desire. He quarrels against all sound wisdom. See, when you allow yourself to be isolated or deliberately isolate yourself, you are fighting every part of the way that God has created us as human beings. We are supposed to be in fellowship. We are supposed to be holding one another accountable, and we are supposed to have free and open communication. But when we isolate, we don't get any of that. All right, verse 2. A fool does not delight in understanding, but only in revealing his own mind. And that's basically the definition of a fool, someone who has no interest in listening to anybody but themselves. In fact, their favorite book of the Bible is 2 Opinions chapter 3. Think about that for a second. You'll get it. By the way, I think that's the most oft quoted book and chapter in the Bible. All right, verse 3. When a wicked man comes, contempt also comes, and with dishonor comes scorn. See, wickedness breeds contempt because you have the battle of good and the evil person wanting more evil, and out of that, dishonor and scorn. See, we can't play with evil. It will bite you. All right, verse 4. The words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. So for this one, what I think Solomon is getting at, based on some of the other scriptures that use this type of analogy, I think what he's getting at, the words of a man's mouth are deep waters. And I'm not 100% on this one, but this is what I think, and I haven't looked it up in any commentaries or anything. But I think what he's getting at, the words of a man's mouth are deep waters, and this analogy of deep waters is something that's hard to comprehend. It comes out of the depths, it's maybe a bit unformed and hard to access, right? The words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. Well, a bubbling brook is very easy to access. It's right there. And I think the idea here is that when someone speaks, miscommunication, and especially when somebody's heart is being expressed, it's very hard sometimes to make sure that communication is accurate, whereas wisdom allows that accuracy to make that water much more accessible. Now, I won't swear that that's what this one is, but that's my current understanding without looking it up. All right, so let's move on to verse 5. To show partiality to the wicked is not good, nor to thrust aside the righteous in judgment. In other words, let righteousness be done and don't reward evil. It's a common theme that should be a no-brainer, and yet in our world today and all the way back to Solomon's day and before, it's not as much of a no-brainer as you would think. Verse 6, a fool's lips bring strife, and his mouth calls for blows. So a fool's lips bring strife, and ain't that the truth? Somebody who has no interest in listening and only interest in talking, they're going to end up offending and ticking off everybody in the room and then some, and his mouth calls for blows. Now again, in this time period, there would have been social punishment for social ills, and to some degree, maybe we should bring that back, but in America, that's called assault, and you will go to jail. You don't get to hit somebody just because they spoke ill. So, and I'm not suggesting that I think that's good. This is just reflecting the culture of that day. But people would speak more carefully if there were consequences. That's part of the problem, I think, in modern America with a lot of the things that are being done and said is there seems to be no consequences anymore. And therefore, people are going down all kinds of crazy paths. All right, verse 7. A fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are the snare of his soul. And again, this is that same person who's not interested in listening or receiving instruction, but only interested in sharing their own thoughts and opinions and making sure that you have to agree with them too, right? A fool's mouth is his ruin. That will bring you to ruin. Nobody's going to want to be around you. You're going to destroy your own life, and thus the snare to your soul, which ultimately leads to the spiritual implication as well as in spiritual death apart from Christ. All right, and then lastly for today, the words of a whisperer are like dainty morsels, and they go down into the innermost parts of the body. The words of a whisperer, this is talking about gossiping, right? You know, did you hear that so-and-so did whatever, right? The words of a whisperer are like dainty morsels, something people can't resist. It shouldn't be this way, but it's built into our wiring, our DNA, so to speak. It's the sin in us that wants it so badly. We want that secret knowledge, right? The words of a whisperer are like dainty morsels, and they go down into the innermost parts of the body. See, when somebody gossips, you can't help but think of whatever that thing was that they shared every time you see or hear the person they were gossiping about. And it also creates wickedness down within the depths of your own soul. So don't gossip, don't listen to gossip. Live simply and live righteously. Ultimately, live for Christ. All right, guys, that is it for today. If you appreciate this ministry, this video, and this ministry, make sure that you hit like, subscribe, turn that bell notification to all so you don't miss any future videos. And if you do appreciate this ministry enough that you want to support us, the two best ways, one is to hit that share button and share this video on all your social media platforms. The other is, of course, you can support us financially. We are closing out our Giving Tuesday fundraiser. We've put a deadline on it for the end of March. So we are closing that fundraiser out. I'll have a video up here where you can learn about that. Or if you just want to give financially anyway, you can go ahead and just do that on your own through a link in the description. Guys, thank you very much, and God bless.